Hi everyone, welcome back. After several months of buying new bonsai material, pots, and supplies to prepare for a new video series, we're finally about ready to kick it off, and we decided to do that by working on a California juniper. Now this California juniper here, like all of them, was collected from the wild in the mountains of California. I'm not the one who collected it. I actually purchased it from the individual who collected it about 15 years ago. So let's go around it and see what we have here. This is obviously a very, very old tree. It's at least 100 years old, maybe a good bit more. It's really hard to tell. I did count more than 100 very fine growth rings when I took off another trunk here at the base that didn't harmonize with the main part of the tree. Now you'll notice there's a lot of interesting deadwood down here and a cut-off branch here, which is an opportunity to do more deadwood and maybe even a shari going all the way down. And as much as I would love to show that to you here today, I can't, because right now it's raining here, the weather is too moist, and it's simply not good conditions for working on deadwood. But what we are going to do with this tree today is prune it back and remove the wiring that's on it, and we'll clean it up a little bit preparatory to a repotting, and then in a later video we'll talk about pot selection and about doing the actual repotting. Now these California junipers tend to grow very rapidly. To give you an example, this entire branch here was a new shoot as of the beginning of this year, and I actually wired it out horizontally, and it grew so strongly upward that it actually took over the wire and bent itself upwards. So, and I had to use a thin wire at the time. We'll just very carefully unwind this to show you, because this was new growth and it hadn't even really hardened off yet. It was green like this other branch that I'm holding in my other hand. So we'll just very carefully take this off here, and part of the cleanup and pruning and rewire, we'll work on that. Now as far as this area that was cut off here, you'll notice a couple of things. Item one, this is a very healthy juniper, and you can tell because even though I cut into bare wood here on what used to be the main trunk, it sprouted new greenery just below the cut-off tip. In fact, it sprouted a lot of greenery. I have 2 or 3 other California junipers which I purchased and which you'll be seeing in other videos and in an upcoming ebook. And unfortunately, because those came from the collection of someone older who was unable to care for them, they're not in anywhere near as good health as this one, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Now as far as why I cut this off, if you go back to the website, you'll see there's a photo of this tree with the original apex coming this way. And I took this tree for a consultation with David Lee, who was one of the eminent authorities on California juniper, and he took one look and he said, cut off the apex. Now naturally, this being the only California juniper I had at the time and probably one of the oldest trees in my collection, I really didn't want to cut off the apex, and I actually sat and meditated on it for a year before I finally decided to go ahead and do it. And what I did was I wired out all the other branches, took a look, and then decided that indeed the apex was in the wrong place. So we did cut it off at that time. That was earlier this year. We trained up a side branch, and virtually all of the new apex here this put on as new growth this year. This tree is valuable enough that when we're removing heavy wiring, we're going to cut the wire off, and we're going to do it as carefully as possible, because these, like I said, you can't get one except by collecting one from the wild, and there are very, very few places where you can legally do that anymore. Also, that sort of thing, the effect of it on the environment is somewhat questionable, which is why my preference is to work with trees that either are old landscape plants or that I grow myself. And in terms of anything collected from the wild, it's something that was collected a long time ago when the situation on planet Earth was a little different than it is now. And but this tree still is a most interesting relic, and we're going to do everything we can to fulfill its bonsai potential. And we're just going on back here and cutting the wire. Now, some of the smaller wire on these, it's actually better to unwind it if you can, because the cutter has a little trouble getting in there on the really fine stuff. But at the same time, with California junipers, you have to be careful because the foliage can sometimes be a little bit brittle. Now, on healthy ones, that's not so much of a concern, but on ones that aren't quite so healthy, and you'll see, even though this has been wired for a year, the foliage still wants to go upward. So this is definitely going to have to be rewired again. And we'll try to correct some of that with pruning, but there's limits to how much you can do with that with these. If you prune them too much, you drive them into spiky growth. And that's not desirable in terms of creating the bonsai. Now this wire here, we're going to just have to keep cutting till we get all of it off of here. And the small one, we'll try to get in there with the cutters. Okay, we got that. And now we've got this one here. And now we'll come back around and start working on other branches. Alright, that's going to take another cut to get that. And I've got to try to get the cutter in there. Okay, that one's off of there. This tree has put on a lot of dense growth this year. One interesting thing about California junipers, in the wild they take a lot of their moisture in through the foliage rather than through the soil. So they tend to like moist, foggy weather. And I'm kind of lucky that way in that my local microclimate, other than in the summertime, we do get a lot of fogs and evening mists and moisture. And the California junipers tend to love it. Okay, now there we unfortunately nicked a little shoot with the wire cutter. And it's just one of the troublesome things about this. Now that we have all the old wire off, we have to prune the tree. Now with California junipers, it's pretty easy. Anything that you can't wire down and use as part of a branch that goes straight up is going to have to come off. And with these, the foliage is so coarse that you can't really pinch or finger prune them. You pretty much have to do it with a sharp scissors or a shears. So that's exactly what we're going to do here, is work our way around and prune the tree down a little bit. Now again, like I said, mostly what we're doing is taking off the upgrowth. And so we'll just work from branch to branch. Now this is a healthy one, so this one puts on a lot of this kind of growth every season. And you'll see here on the back branch in particular, it's very dense. So we have to take care of that in order to restore the tree's appearance. So we have all these shoots here, and some of these side branches here are actually last year's upgrowth, which was wired out because we needed side branches. That one don't really need. I'm going to take off this one, and then we have a fairly dense one here. And then this one is getting a little long, so we'll take it back to there. And same with that. And here, okay, the longest branch tip is here, so we want to come in a little bit on the upper branches in order to keep the tree's shape proper. Now you don't get a lot of downgrowth with these like you do with some junipers such as Shimpakus and San Jose's. This is actually fairly rare that you see something like that. And we'll come back around here to the front branch. And again, we've got a lot of dense upward growth here that needs to be taken off and taken back. Now, I don't particularly want this tree to get any bigger because the trunk thickness is very good for the size that the tree is. So we have most of the structure we need. It's just a matter of refining the branches. Okay, and this is the first branch here, and it's very healthy. I actually took quite a bit off of this branch when I wired it last spring, and it's grown back amazingly well. The tree obviously likes the soil, the fertilizer, and the feeding program. Now for soil, I'm using my usual mix. It's based on decomposed granite as the aggregate. I know a lot of guys like to grow these in academia, but in the wild, in their native environment, these trees grow in sand and decomposed granite. And I'm a firm believer that if you replicate the tree's natural environment, you end up with a happy tree. And looking at this one, it's doing quite well. We have just a little bit of down-hanging growth here. And a little bit more cleanup work to do on the upper branches. So we'll just keep going here. We've completed pruning. We've put a little bit of wiring on upper branches where the trees needed it. And in the near future, there will be a little bit more thinning, probably some more wiring, a lot of development around the apex, and deadwood work, and repotting out of this mica pot into a true bonsai pot. And with a little luck, maybe this tree will be ready for the show in June. If not June of 2013, then maybe 2014. So we'll do a slow 360 to finish this and show the tree as it is right now. Thank you for watching, folks.